She escaped from hell wearing nothing but a torn dress and fear written all across her face. He found her trembling in the rain, vulnerable and lost. When Rowan held her in his arms, something awakened inside him, something dangerous, possessive, and impossible to ignore. Diana had no idea that by falling into the arms of that mysterious CEO, she'd be stepping into a game of desire, protection, and overwhelming passion. What started as a rescue would become the most intense surrender of their lives. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and become a member to get early access to upcoming stories. And if you feel it was truly worth listening to, also click the super thanks button. Your gesture makes all the difference and helps us keep bringing stories that move you. Night fell like a heavy curtain over Manhattan, and the rain pounded the asphalt with a violence that seemed to echo the despair in Diana's chest. Her bare feet slapped against the frozen concrete, each step a stabbing pain she could barely feel. The fear was greater. The navy blue silk dress, which hours earlier had been impeccable, now hung in wet tatters, clinging to her skin like a second layer of vulnerability. The torn fabric revealed scratches on her arms, red marks that burned under the cold rain. She ran without direction, without a plan, just away, the smell of wet asphalt mixed with the metallic taste of blood in her mouth. She had bitten her lip jumping over the mansion wall, and now the taste reminded her that this was real. Everything was real. The betrayal, the trap. The man who should have protected her, her adoptive uncle, had sold her freedom as if she were just another piece on a board of dirty business deals. Diana turned a narrow corner, stumbling into a puddle that reflected the neon lights of a nearby bar. Her knees gave way, but she forced herself to keep going. She couldn't stop. If she stopped, they would find her. And if they found her, she preferred not to imagine. The sound of an engine accelerating behind her made her heart race. Headlights illuminated the empty street ahead, and Diana felt panic rise up her throat like a suffocating wave. She staggered to the side, slipping between two buildings, searching for any shadow that could swallow her whole. But her feet no longer obeyed. The adrenaline that had kept her standing was beginning to fade, replaced by brutal exhaustion. Her legs trembled, her vision blurred. The world spun in wet, distorted circles. That's when she saw him. A man standing on the corner, under the awning of a glass and steel building. Tall, broad shoulders, impeccable dark grey suit even in the rain. He held a black umbrella, but his eyes were fixed on her. Deep, dark, impossible to decipher. There was no rush in his movements, just a calculated observation, as if he were evaluating every detail of that chaotic scene. Diana stopped, not because she wanted to, but because her body finally gave up. Her knees hit the wet ground, and she felt her palms scrape against the asphalt. The rain beat down on her back, cold and relentless, soaking every strand of hair that fell over her face. She tried to get up, but couldn't. Her strength had run out. And then, he was beside her. Diana felt the warmth before she saw him approach. A heavy coat fell over her shoulders, warm, smelling of leather and something woody, like sandalwood mixed with coffee. Firm hands, but surprisingly gentle, held her by the arms, lifting her from the ground as if she weighed nothing. "You're safe now." His voice was deep, husky, loaded with a quiet authority that seemed to defy the chaos around them. Diana tried to focus on his eyes, but her vision was too blurred. All she could make out was the outline of an angular face, a defined jawline, and those dark eyes that seemed to hold secrets she would never be able to unravel. I can't." She tried to speak, but the words came out in a trembling whisper, almost inaudible under the sound of the rain. "You don't need to say anything right now." He adjusted the coat over her shoulders, his fingers brushing lightly against her exposed collarbone. The touch was warm, contrasting brutally with Diana's frozen skin. "No one else is going to hurt you, I promise." There was something in the way he said it, not as an empty offer, but as an unshakable oath, that made something inside Diana break. Hot tears began to stream down her face, mixing with the rain. "Why are you helping me?" she managed to ask, shaking violently now that the adrenaline was completely gone. Rowan, though she didn't yet know his name, tilted his head slightly, as if weighing the right answer. Then, with a careful movement, he lifted her in his arms. Diana felt his chest against her body, solid and firm, his heartbeat calm and steady beneath the wet suit. It was as if he were an anchor in the middle of the storm. Because some people deserve to be saved. He began to walk, his steps firm and determined. And you clearly are one of them. Diana wanted to protest, wanted to say that he didn't know her, that he didn't know what she had run from, that she was just another problem he didn't need to carry. But the words got lost in her throat. Her eyes began to grow heavy, exhaustion finally winning. She parted her lips, trying to ask where he was taking her, but the last thing she felt was the warmth of his body wrapping around her like a protective shield. The smell of sandalwood and coffee, the soft texture of the coat against her wounded skin, and that strange, almost impossible feeling that for the first time in years, she was safe. When Diana passed out, Rowan tightened his arms around her, holding her more firmly. His dark eyes swept the empty street, alert to any suspicious movement. He didn't know who this woman was, didn't know where she came from, but one thing he knew with absolute certainty: whoever had done this to her was going to regret it. He entered the glass building, ignoring the doorman's surprised look, and went straight to the private elevator. The doors closed with a soft sound, and silence finally enveloped them both. Rowan looked at the woman in his arms, pale face, lips purple from the cold-soaked hair stuck to her forehead. She was fragile, but he sensed there was something more, something that made her not give up, even when everything conspired against her. And maybe that was exactly what he needed to find. The elevator rose in silence, taking them away from the chaos below, but neither of them knew that this encounter in the rain was just the beginning. That from that night on, nothing would be the same, and that some falls are not accidents, they're destiny. Diana woke with the sensation of floating, not in water, but in something soft, enveloping, that smelled of lavender and clean cotton. Her eyes opened slowly, blinking against the gentle brightness coming through the enormous glass windows. Morning light bathed the room in golden tones, revealing immaculate white walls, minimalist dark wood furniture, and sheets of a white so pure they seemed never to have been used. She was lying in a king-size bed, sunk into pillows that felt like clouds. The comforter was heavy and warm, wrapping around her like a protective cocoon. For a moment, Diana simply lay there, confused, trying to understand where she was. Her body ached, every muscle screaming with exhaustion, but she was clean, dry, wearing a men's shirt that reached mid-thigh, the soft cotton fabric brushing against her still sensitive skin. Then the memories came flooding back, the escape, the rain, the man. Diana sat up abruptly, her heart racing, and that's when she saw him. He was sitting in a leather armchair near the panoramic window, completely still, like a statue carved from shadows and light. His white shirt was partially open, revealing the defined line of his chest, the first two buttons undone in an almost careless way. The sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, exposing muscular forearms and large hands resting on the arms of the chair. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd run his fingers through it a few times during the night, but it was his eyes that held her. Dark, intense, fixed on her with a depth that made Diana feel as if he could read every thought, every fear, every secret buried in her soul. "You slept 12 hours, he said, his deep voice breaking the silence. It wasn't an accusation, just a fact. Diana pulled the comforter up to her chest, suddenly conscious of how exposed she was. Where am I? In my home. He leaned slightly forward, elbows resting on his knees, fingers interlaced. Penthouse in the Upper East Side. You're safe here. Safe. That word again. Diana wanted to believe it, but years of distrust had taught her not to trust so easily. She looked around, searching for signs of danger, but all she found was understated luxury and a strange sense of peace. You brought me here. It wasn't a question. Yes. Why? Rowan remained silent for a moment, as if carefully choosing his words. Then he stood up, and Diana realized for the first time how imposing he was. Tall, broad shoulders, magnetic presence that filled the space around him. He walked to the window, hands in the pockets of his black dress pants, looking at the city below. Because you needed it. He turned his face to the side, his defined profile silhouetted against the light. And because I don't let people die in the rain, Diana felt a lump in her throat. She lowered her eyes, noticing for the first time the clean bandages on her arms, the scratches carefully treated. Someone had taken care of her. He had taken care of her. "Did you change my clothes?" The question came out in an almost inaudible whisper. Rowan turned completely, and for the first time, Diana saw something that could be a smile at the corner of his lips. It wasn't complete, more like a suggestion, a promise of something that rarely appeared. "No, I called a doctor. She examined you, cleaned you up, treated your injuries." He took a step toward the bed slowly, as if he didn't want to frighten her. "You were hypothermic, dehydrated, exhausted. If you'd stayed 10 more minutes on the street..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Diana swallowed hard, feeling her eyes burn. "Thank you." Rowan came closer, and Diana noticed his scent, that same aroma of sandalwood and coffee, now mixed with something citrusy, as if he'd just gotten out of the shower. He stopped beside the bed, looking at her with an intensity that made the air feel heavier. "You don't need to thank me." He reached out, taking a strand of hair that fell over Diana's face, carefully placing it behind her ear. His fingers brushed her cheek, warm and firm, and Diana felt a shiver run the entire length of her spine. "You're even more beautiful when you wake up." Diana's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't look away. There was something in that touch, in the way his fingers lingered a second longer than necessary, that made her entire body awaken in a way she didn't expect. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice husky. "Rowan." He stepped back, but the warmth of his touch remained. Rowan Hale. The name sounded familiar, like something she should know, but Diana was too busy trying to control her breathing to process it. "And you?" He crossed his arms, tilting his head slightly. "Who are you when you're not running in the rain?" Diana hesitated. Giving her name meant making this real. It meant admitting she had trusted him enough to stay here, in his home, wearing his shirt. "Diana." She pulled the comforter closer, as if she could hide behind it. "Diana Williams." Something passed through Rowan's eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or curiosity. But he said nothing. He just nodded, as if storing that information somewhere safe. "Diana." He repeated it, and the way the name left his lips made something inside her tighten. "Who hurt you, Diana?" The question fell like a stone into the silence. Diana felt the air escape from her lungs. She wanted to lie, wanted to say everything was fine, that it had just been an accident, that she could take care of herself. But when she looked into his eyes, those dark eyes that seemed to see through all her defenses, the words simply wouldn't come out. Rowan took another step, now so close that Diana could feel the heat emanating from his body. He leaned in slightly, resting one hand on the headboard, bringing his face closer to hers. "You don't need to tell me now." His voice was low, almost a whisper, but loaded with a dangerous promise. "But when you're ready, I want to know the name of every person who made you run like that." Diana felt his breath brush her lips, warm, controlled, but with an underlying intensity that made her heart race. She couldn't move, couldn't think, only feel. "Why?" she managed to ask, her voice trembling. Rowan raised his free hand, gently holding her chin between his fingers, forcing her to look directly into his eyes. The touch was firm, but didn't hurt. Possessive, but not threatening, because no one should be that afraid. He ran his thumb along the line of her jaw slowly, as if memorizing every curve. "And because now that you're here, I'm not going to let that happen again." The words weren't just a promise. They were a declaration. Territory being marked without Diana even realizing it. She should be afraid, should question. But all she felt was the warmth of that touch, the strange security emanating from him, and an almost uncontrollable desire to lean in closer. Rowan noticed. She saw it in his eyes, the exact moment he noticed how affected she was. And then he pulled away, releasing her as if the touch burned. "You must be hungry." He straightened his body, adjusting his shirt with controlled movements. "I'll make breakfast." Diana blinked, confused by the abrupt change. "You cook." He looked at her over his shoulder, and this time the smile was real. Small, but genuine. "You'd be surprised by the things I know how to do, Diana." And then he left, leaving her alone in that enormous room, with her heart still racing and her skin tingling where he had touched. Diana brought her hand to her own face, feeling the warmth that still remained. She didn't know who Rowan Hale was, didn't know what he wanted, but one thing was certain: she was no longer running alone. And maybe that was even more dangerous. 3 days had passed since Diana had woken up in that king-size bed, and with each morning that followed, the feeling of living in a dream, or perhaps in a parallel universe, only grew. Rowan hadn't pressured her, hadn't asked invasive questions, hadn't demanded explanations. He'd simply said in that deep, unwavering voice, "Stay until you feel strong enough to decide where to go." And Diana, to her own surprise, stayed. Rowan's penthouse was a study in contrasts. Modern and minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, but at the same time welcoming, with details that revealed the personality of whoever lived there. Books stacked on a dark wood shelf, a collection of old vinyls next to a record player, a succulent plant on the windowsill that surprisingly seemed well cared for. Diana had learned to recognize the sounds of his routine: the discreet alarm at 6 in the morning, the sound of the shower water, the aroma of fresh coffee invading the apartment shortly after. Rowan woke early, always impeccable, always with that magnetic presence that made the air around him feel denser. But it was in the small moments, in the accidental brushes in the hallways, that Diana felt the tension accumulate like electricity before a storm. That morning she woke earlier than usual. The light was still soft, tinged with pink tones announcing dawn. Diana left the guest room, which Rowan had insisted she use, wearing grey sweatpants and a white t-shirt he had also provided. Simple clothes, but that smelled of the same fabric softener he used, creating a strange and comforting intimacy. She walked barefoot down the hallway, her feet sinking into the soft carpet, and was guided by the unmistakable smell of coffee. When she entered the kitchen, what she saw made her stop in the doorway. Rowan had his back to her, leaning over the black marble countertop, stirring something in a pan. He wore only dark grey pajama pants that sat low on his hips, and nothing else. The morning light illuminated his bare back, revealing defined musculature, broad shoulders, and a thin scar that cut across his right shoulder blade, like a reminder of something he would never voluntarily tell. Diana held her breath. There was something deeply intimate about seeing him like this, vulnerable, human, so different from the always composed man she'd known until now. As if sensing her presence, Rowan turned his face to the side, just enough to look at her over his shoulder. A half smile curved his lips. "You're up early today." Diana swallowed hard, forcing herself to move. "The smell of coffee called me. Then my strategy worked." He turned completely, and Diana had to make a conscious effort to keep her eyes on his face, and not on the way his abdominal muscles contracted with each movement. "Pancakes? You're making pancakes?" She couldn't hide the surprise in her voice. Rowan raised an eyebrow, amused. "I warned you that you'd be surprised by the things I know how to do." Diana walked to the counter, sitting on one of the high black leather stools. From there she had a privileged and dangerous view of Rowan working. He moved with natural efficiency, flipping the pancakes with precision, the aroma of vanilla and cinnamon filling the space. "How are the injuries?" he asked without looking at her, focused on the pan. Diana looked at her own arms. The scratches were healing, turning into pink lines that would soon disappear. "Better. They hardly hurt anymore." "Good." He grabbed 2 cups, pouring coffee for both of them. When he approached to hand her the cup, his fingers brushed hers, a brief touch almost insignificant. But that sent an electric current through Diana's arm. "You're recovering quickly." She held the cup with both hands, feeling the warmth against her palms. "I think it's because I feel safe." The words came out before she could filter them. A heavy silence fell between them. Rowan stopped moving, his dark eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made Diana's heart race. "Good," he repeated, lower this time, as if he were talking more to himself than to her. "That's exactly how it should be." Diana looked away, taking a sip of coffee to have something to focus on other than the way he looked at her, as if she were something precious and fragile, but also something he wanted to possess. Rowan returned to the pan, stacking the pancakes on 2 plates. He placed one in front of Diana, along with a jar of honey and fresh fruit. You don't need to do this," Diana said, looking at the food. "Take care of me like this." "I know." He sat down beside her, so close their knees almost touched. "But I want to." "Why?" Rowan cut a piece of pancake, chewing slowly while considering the answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was more serious. "Because it's been a long time since anyone stayed long enough for me to take care of them." He looked at her, and there was something raw in that look, a vulnerability he rarely let show. "And because you need it. And I like being needed." Diana felt her chest tighten. There were layers in those words, untold stories, unhealed wounds. She wanted to ask more, but knew it wasn't the moment. Instead, she just nodded, picking up her fork and starting to eat. They shared breakfast in comfortable silence, punctuated only by the sound of silverware against plates and the distant noise of the city waking up below. It was when Diana tried to reach for the honey jar in the center of the counter that everything changed. Her fingers slipped on the handle, wet with condensation. The jar tipped over, spilling golden, viscous honey onto the marble. Diana stood up quickly, trying to prevent the disaster, but only managed to bump Rowan's arm, making his cup tip over too. "Damn it!" She grabbed a dish towel, crouching down to clean up the mess. At the same time, Rowan made the same movement. They met crouched beside the counter, faces inches from each other, bodies bent in the same position. Diana felt his breath against her lips, warm, controlled, smelling of coffee and cinnamon. Rowan didn't move. Neither did she. His eyes dropped to Diana's mouth, lingering there before returning to meet her gaze. The tension between them was palpable, like a rope stretched to its limit, about to break. "Diana!" His voice came out hoarse, loaded with something dangerous. "Yes?" She could barely breathe. Rowan raised his hand, his fingers touching her face with a softness that contrasted brutally with the intensity in his gaze. He traced the line of her jaw, went down her neck, stopping at the base of her throat where Diana's pulse beat uncontrollably. "If you keep looking at me like that," he moved closer, his forehead almost touching hers, "you're going to make me forget that I want to protect you, not possess you." Diana felt the entire world narrow to that moment, to the heat of his body so close, to the smell of sandalwood mixed with clean sweat, to the way his fingers remained on her neck, feeling every accelerated beat of her heart. "And what if I don't want you to forget?" The words came out in a bold whisper that surprised even herself. Something darkened in Rowan's eyes, a primitive hunger he had kept controlled until then. His fingers closed slightly around her neck, not squeezing, just holding, marking. "Then you have no idea what danger you're getting yourself into." He brushed his nose against hers, their lips so close Diana could feel the heat. "Because I'm not a good man, Diana. And when I want something, I take it." Her heart exploded in uncontrolled beats. She should be afraid, should pull away. But all she could feel was the burning desire to close that minimal distance, to discover what would happen if she just leaned in one more centimeter. But Rowan pulled away first. He stood up in one fluid motion, putting distance between them, as if that moment had never happened. Diana remained crouched, still holding the dish towel soaked with honey, trying to control her breathing. "I'm going to take a shower." His voice was more controlled now, back to a neutral tone. "Then I need to go to the office. There's food in the fridge, make yourself at home." And then he left, leaving Diana alone in the kitchen, with her heart still racing and her skin tingling where he had touched. She looked at the mess of honey on the floor, at the tipped cup, at the empty space where Rowan had been seconds before, and realized she was completely lost. Not just in his house, but in something much more dangerous. In him. Rowan's phone rang at 3 in the morning. Diana woke to the muffled sound coming from the room next door, followed by firm footsteps in the hallway. She sat up in bed, her heart already racing by instinct, that familiar fear crawling up her spine. 3 days of peace had made her almost forget, almost that there were still people looking for her. The guest room door opened without ceremony. Rowan entered wearing only black sweatpants, his bare chest still marked by creases from the pillow, his hair disheveled. But his eyes were completely alert, sharp as blades. "Put this on." He threw a hoodie and sneakers on the bed. "Now." The tone left no room for discussion. Diana felt her blood run cold. What happened? They know you're here. Rowan was already moving, grabbing a backpack from the closet, filling it with what appeared to be documents and a laptop. Security cameras picked up suspicious movement in the lobby. 3 men. They're not residents. Diana jumped out of bed, her hands trembling as she put on the hoodie. How did they find me? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. He stopped in front of her, holding her by the shoulders, forcing her to look into his eyes. Diana, listen to me. You're going down to the garage via the service elevator. Marcus, my driver, is waiting. He's going to take you somewhere safe. And you? I'm going to take care of this. No. Diana grabbed his wrist, feeling the tense muscles beneath his skin. I'm not leaving you here alone to face my problems. Something crossed Rowan's face, surprise perhaps, or something deeper. He placed his hand over hers, squeezing gently. Your problems are my problems now. His voice was firm, unwavering, and I won't let anyone hurt you. Not ever again. Before Diana could respond, the sound of raised voices echoed in the hallway outside. Rowan pushed her back into the room, placing his body as a shield between her and the door. Stay behind me, he ordered. Diana obeyed, but every fiber of her being screamed against the idea of using Rowan as protection. She didn't want anyone else getting hurt because of her. The sound of fists against wood echoed through the penthouse. Someone was trying to break down the front door. Rowan pulled his phone from his pocket, typing something quickly before putting it back. Security is coming up, 2 minutes. He looked at Diana over his shoulder. But I don't need 2 minutes. Before she could ask what he meant, the penthouse door burst open with a crash. 3 men entered, large, dressed in black, faces partially covered by beanies. The biggest one pointed directly at the hallway where Rowan and Diana stood. Hand over the girl and nobody gets hurt. Rowan took a step forward, completely blocking Diana from view. When he spoke, his voice was low, deadly. Get out of my home now. The man laughed, a harsh, unpleasant sound. You don't know who you're messing with, Mr. Hale. The Williams family wants their niece back, and they always get what they want. Diana felt her stomach turn at hearing the surname. So that was it. Her uncle had sent professional thugs after her, trained men without scruples, who wouldn't hesitate to use violence. Then tell the Williams, Rowan spoke with a frightening calm, that they just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Everything happened too fast for Diana to process. The first man lunged forward, but Rowan moved like lightning. He dodged the punch, grabbed the attacker's arm and twisted with brutal precision. The sound of bones snapping echoed in the silence, followed by a scream of pain. Rowan threw him against the wall with enough force to knock him unconscious. The other 2 attacked simultaneously. Rowan blocked a kick, counter-attacked with a blow to the abdomen that knocked the wind out of the second man, then spun and landed a punch to the third one's jaw with such force that Diana heard teeth clicking. It was like watching a violent, perfectly choreographed dance. Every movement of Rowan's was calculated, efficient, deadly. He didn't waste energy, didn't hesitate. And when finally all 3 men were on the ground, 1 unconscious, 2 groaning in pain, Rowan remained standing, breathing only slightly accelerated, his knuckles bleeding. Diana was paralyzed. She had seen violence before, had grown up in a house where power was exercised through fear, but never like this. Never someone fighting for her. Rowan turned, and Diana saw something wild in his eyes, something primitive he kept locked beneath that controlled facade. He walked to her, taking her face in both hands, checking if she was hurt. Are you okay? His voice was hoarse, urgent. Diana nodded, still in shock. How did you do that? Later. He pulled her close, wrapping an arm around her while guiding her away from the fallen bodies. We need to get out of here now. But Diana planted her feet on the ground, resisting. No, not until you tell me the truth. Who are you, Rowan? He stopped, his jaw clenched. For a moment, Diana thought he wouldn't answer. But then he sighed, running his hand through his hair, leaving a red stain of his own blood. I'm not just a CEO, Diana. His eyes met hers, raw and honest. Before I inherited my family's company, I worked in private security. Protection for high-level executives, extraction from conflict zones, complicated situations. I know how to fight. I know how to defend myself, and I know how to protect those who need to be protected. Diana felt the world readjust around her. This man who made pancakes, who touched her face with such gentleness, was also capable of this controlled violence, this brutal strength. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were already scared enough. He took a step closer, his voice softening. And because I didn't want you to see me as one more threat. I don't see you that way. The words came out before Diana could think them through. I see someone who risked everything to keep me safe. Something changed in Rowan's face. The tension in his shoulders relaxed minimally, and he reached out, touching her face as if making sure she was real. Then you need to let me keep doing that. His fingers slid down her cheek, down her neck, stopping where her pulse beat rapidly. But not here. Not like this. The sound of elevators opening echoed in the hallway. The security team had finally arrived. Rowan gave quick, precise orders. Remove the intruders, check all cameras, reinforce the perimeter. Diana watched everything with a mixture of fascination and fear. This was a side of Rowan she had never seen. The commander, the strategist, the man who clearly was used to controlling impossible situations. When they were finally alone again, Rowan guided her back to the bedroom. But this time, he didn't leave. He sat on the edge of the bed, pulling Diana to stand between his legs, his hands resting on her waist. I need to teach you how to defend yourself. It wasn't a request. It was a statement. What? You can't always depend on me. His thumbs traced slow circles over the fabric of the hoodie, burning through the clothing. You need to know how to protect yourself. Need to know how to fight if I'm not around. Diana looked down, seeing the determination etched into every line of his face. Do you think they'll try again? I'm sure of it. Rowan squeezed her waist lightly. But next time you'll be ready. And you're going to teach me? Yes. He pulled her closer until Diana's knees touched the inside of his thighs. We start tomorrow. But now you sleep here. Diana blinked, confused. Here? In your room? In my room. He confirmed without a trace of hesitation. In my bed. With me. Because I'm not letting you out of my sight until I'm absolutely certain you're safe. Diana's heart raced. Sharing his bed was crossing a line they had been carefully avoiding. But at the same time, the idea of sleeping alone after what had just happened was terrifying. Just sleep, she asked, her voice lower than she intended. Rowan held her face with both hands, bringing her closer until their foreheads touched. Just sleep, he promised. But you're going to be in my arms. And anyone who tries to reach you will have to go through me first. Diana closed her eyes, feeling tears burn beneath her eyelids. No one had ever fought for her like this. No one had ever placed themselves between her and danger with such conviction. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. Rowan kissed her forehead, a soft, comforting touch. Because I'm not done yet. Whoever sent those men is going to regret it. And in that moment, with his voice reverberating against her skin, Diana believed him. The next 3 days were an immersion into a world Diana never imagined existed. Rowan had transformed one of the penthouse rooms into an improvised training space, mats on the floor, basic equipment, and an unwavering determination to make her strong enough to defend herself. Every morning at 6 o'clock sharp, he'd wake her with a gentle touch on her shoulder and that deep voice that had already become part of her dreams. Time to train. And Diana discovered that Rowan as an instructor was a dangerous mix of patient and relentless. He taught each movement with precision, correcting her posture with touches that lasted too long, demonstrating techniques that required intense physical proximity. It was torture in the best and worst way possible. That morning, sweat was already gluing Diana's grey tank top to her body. She was breathing hard, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, her muscles aching in a way that paradoxically made her feel alive. Again, Rowan ordered, standing before her with his arms crossed, wearing only black training shorts that revealed the defined musculature of his legs. This time don't think, just react. Diana nodded, wiping sweat from her forehead. She assumed the defensive position he had taught her, weight distributed, knees slightly bent, hands protecting her face. Rowan lunged forward, simulating an attack. Diana dodged, as she'd practiced dozens of times, but this time he was faster. Before she could process it, he was behind her, an arm wrapping around her waist, pulling her against his chest. "Too slow," he murmured in her ear, his breath hot against the sensitive skin of her neck. "If I were a real enemy, you'd be in danger right now." Diana felt every inch of his body pressed against her back, solid, warm, impossible to ignore. Her heart raced, but not from fear. It was something else, something much more dangerous. "What do I do?" she managed to ask, her voice coming out huskier than she intended. "Use the proximity against me." Rowan's lips brushed her ear as he spoke, sending shivers down her spine. "You have strength, Diana, but you don't know how to use it yet." He adjusted his grip, his fingers pressing lightly on her hips, guiding her through the defensive movement. Diana tried to concentrate on the technique, but all she could feel was the heat emanating from him, the smell of clean sweat mixed with that characteristic sandalwood, the way his abdominal muscles contracted against her back. "Now," Rowan instructed, his voice lower. "You turn like this." He moved her body with his own hands, and used his weight against him. But when Diana tried to execute the movement, something went wrong. She turned too fast, lost her balance, and they both fell onto the mat. Rowan acted on instinct, turning at the last second to absorb the impact, pulling Diana so she fell on top of him. They froze. Diana was lying on top of Rowan's chest, their legs tangled together, her hands resting on his shoulders to stabilize herself. Both their hearts beat erratically. She could feel it through the thin layer of fabric separating them. Rowan looked at her with those dark eyes that seemed to see through all her defenses. One of his hands was on Diana's waist, holding her in place. The other rose slowly, tracing the line of her spine until it reached the nape of her neck, his fingers tangling in the strands of hair that had escaped from her bun. "Diana." He said her name like a prayer, like a warning, like a surrender. "Rowan," she responded, unable to look away. "If you don't move away now." His voice was pure roughness, control unraveling. "I'm going to do something I shouldn't." "And what if I don't want to move away?" Rowan's fingers tightened on the nape of her neck. He pulled her down, reducing the distance between them to millimeters. Diana could feel his breath against her lips, hot, irregular, loaded with desire. "Then you need to be sure." His eyes dropped to her mouth, lingering there. "Because if I kiss you now, it won't be gentle. It won't be innocent. And I don't know if I'll be able to stop." Diana felt something inside her break, the last barrier of resistance, the last remnant of fear. She wanted this, wanted him, wanted to feel what it was like to be desired by someone who looked at her as if she were the only thing that mattered in the world. "I'm sure," she whispered. It was all Rowan needed. He pulled her down hard, crushing his lips to hers in a kiss that had nothing hesitant about it. It was hungry, desperate, years of loneliness and repressed desire exploding in a single moment. Rowan's lips were firm, demanding, molding to hers as if they'd been made for this. Diana moaned softly, and Rowan took advantage of the opening to deepen the kiss, his tongue sliding against hers in an intimate and devastating dance. He turned her in one fluid motion, laying her down on the mat while covering her body with his, never breaking contact. Diana's hands traveled up his bare back, feeling the muscles contract under his sweaty skin, her nails scratching lightly when he bit her lower lip. Rowan responded with a low growl in his throat, his hands sliding along her waist, up her ribs, stopping just below her breasts, while his thumb traced torturous circles through the fabric of her tank top. "Diana," he groaned against her lips, "you have no idea what you do to me." He kissed the corner of her mouth. The line of her jaw went down her neck, leaving a trail of wet kisses and soft bites. Diana arched her body involuntarily, seeking more contact, more heat, more of him. Rowan returned to her mouth, kissing her with an intensity that stole all the air from her lungs. They were deep kisses, slow, wet, loaded with a promise of what could come. His hands finally moved up, covering her breasts over her clothes, squeezing lightly, drawing a broken sigh from Diana. "Rowan." She didn't know what she was asking for. She just knew she needed more. He raised his head, looking at her with eyes so dark they seemed black. His hair was completely disheveled, his lips red and swollen, his breathing heavy. He had never seemed so human, so vulnerable, so completely hers. "I need to stop." he said, but didn't move. Because if I don't stop now, I'm going to take you to my bed and not let you leave for days. Diana raised her hand, touching his face, her thumb tracing his swollen lower lip. And what if I don't want you to stop? Rowan closed his eyes as if fighting an internal battle. When he opened them again, there was a decision there. Then you sleep with me tonight. It wasn't a request, it was a necessity. In my room, in my bed, in my arms. Just to have you close, just to know you're safe, that you're real. Diana nodded, unable to form words. Rowan leaned in, kissing her again, but this time it was different, softer, more tender, like a sealed promise. When he finally pulled away, he stood up, pulling her with him. Diana stood, her legs wobbly, her entire body vibrating with sensations she could barely name. Rowan held her face with both hands, foreheads touching, eyes closed, breaths mingling. You scare me, Diana, he confessed in a rough whisper. Because you make me want to believe again. In things I swore I'd never let into my life again. Like what? She asked, her hands resting on his chest, feeling his heart beating hard under her palms. Like love. He opened his eyes, and there was so much truth there that Diana felt her chest tighten. Like hope. Like the possibility that maybe I don't need to always be alone. Diana felt tears burn in her eyes. She rose on her tiptoes, kissing him softly. A wordless response to everything he had just confessed. You're not alone, she murmured against his lips. Not anymore. Rowan wrapped his arms around her, pressing her against his chest as if he wanted to fuse their two bodies into one. They stayed like that for long minutes, just holding each other, breathing together, existing in the same space. And when they finally separated, something had changed irreversibly. They were no longer two strangers sharing the same roof. They were two wounded souls who had found in each other the possibility of healing. But outside, in the shadows of Manhattan, forces were moving. And the peace they had found was about to be tested in ways neither of them could imagine. Night fell over Manhattan like a dark velvet mantle, and Rowan's penthouse was wrapped in soft shadows, illuminated only by the city lights below. Diana was sitting on the huge grey leather sofa in the living room, her legs tucked under her body, a cup of hot tea between her hands. Steam rose in lazy spirals, carrying the aroma of chamomile and honey. Rowan was on the other side of the room, standing before the panoramic window, hands in the pockets of his black sweatpants, shoulders tense beneath his white t-shirt. He was looking at the city, but Diana knew his mind was somewhere else, in memories, in places he rarely visited voluntarily. Since the kiss that morning, something had changed between them. It wasn't just physical desire, though that pulsed in the air like electricity. It was something deeper, an emotional intimacy that demanded honesty, vulnerability, the courage to show the scars they both hid. You're too quiet, Diana said, breaking the silence. Her voice sounded soft in the dim light. Rowan turned his face to the side, just enough for her to see his profile silhouetted against the city lights. I'm thinking. About what? He remained silent for a long moment. Then finally he turned completely, walking to the sofa. Instead of sitting beside her, he knelt on the floor in front of Diana, placing himself at the same height as her. The proximity was intimate, almost painful. About how you got here, he said, his dark eyes fixed on hers. About everything that brought you to me. About how someone could hurt you to the point of making you run barefoot in the rain. Diana felt her chest tighten. She knew this moment would come, the time to share the truth she had buried so deep. But looking at Rowan, seeing the genuine concern etched into every line of his face, she realized that maybe it was finally safe to tell. My parents died when I was 12, she began, her voice low but steady. Car accident. I survived. They didn't. And suddenly I found myself living with my Uncle Charles, my mother's younger brother. Rowan took the teacup from her hands, placing it on the coffee table, then held Diana's hands between his. The gesture was simple, but anchoring. At first, he was kind, Diana continued, looking at their intertwined hands. He gave me a nice room, expensive clothes, private education. I thought I was lucky, that he really cared. She laughed without humor. But I was just an investment, a piece in a game I didn't even know was being played. Did he hurt you? Rowan's voice came out tense, dangerous. Not physically, not at first. Diana raised her eyes, meeting his gaze. But he controlled me. Every friendship, every choice, every moment of my life was monitored, approved or denied by him. And as I grew up, I realized he was preparing me, molding me to be a bargaining chip. Rowan squeezed her hands, his jaw tense. A bargaining chip for what? To seal deals, to gain influence. Diana felt tears threaten but refused to let them fall. 3 weeks ago, he told me I was getting married. He didn't ask me, he told me, to a man 20 years older, associated with dirty business, who looked at me as if I were property. Son of a bitch, Rowan muttered through his teeth. I said no. For the first time in my life, I said no. Diana felt a tremor in her voice, but continued. And he locked me in my room. Said I'd stay there until I learned to be grateful, until I accepted my role, until I stopped being selfish. Rowan released one of her hands, raising it to touch Diana's face. His thumb traced the line of her jaw with a tenderness that contrasted with the evident anger in his eyes. How did you escape? The maid, Diana said. Maria. She'd worked there for years, saw everything. And one night, she unlocked my bedroom door, gave me money she'd saved, and told me to run, to never look back. Now the tears came, hot and silent. I don't even know if she's okay. If he found out it was her, we'll find out, Rowan promised immediately. I'll put people on finding her. If she needs protection, she'll have it, I promise. Diana nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Rowan pulled her forward, wrapping her in his arms, letting her rest her head on his shoulder. He smelled of soap and that woody aroma she already associated with safety. You were so brave, he murmured against her hair. Braver than most people would ever be. I was so scared, Diana confessed against his chest. I still am. I know. Rowan stroked her back in slow, comforting movements. But you're not alone in this anymore. You understand? You have someone on your side now. Diana pulled back slightly, looking at him through her tears. Why? Why do you care so much? Rowan was quiet for a long moment. Then he took Diana's hand, turning it palm up and placed it over a long, irregular scar that cut across his right forearm. Because I know what it's like, he said simply. Diana traced the scar with her fingers, feeling the texture of skin that had healed unevenly. What happened? My father. Rowan released a heavy breath, as if preparing to dive into deep waters. He built an empire. Hale Company is known worldwide, but nobody knows the price that was paid. The people who were used. Discarded. Diana waited, giving him the time he needed. When I was 17, I discovered he was involved in influence peddling, blackmail, much worse things. Rowan looked at his own scar. I confronted him, and he showed me exactly what happened to people who opposed him. This scar? It was from a piece of glass. A lesson, as he called it. My God, Diana whispered, her fingers still tracing the mark. I left home that night, at 17, with nothing but the clothes on my back. I spent 3 years making it on my own, learning to survive, to fight, to become someone who would never be a victim again. He turned his hand, interlacing his fingers with hers. When he died, he left the company to me, as if it were some kind of redemption. But it wasn't, it was a burden, a responsibility to fix everything he broke. And did you fix it? Diana asked softly. I'm still trying. Rowan brought her hand to his lips, kissing each fingertip with reverent delicacy. But the point is, I understand, Diana. I understand what it's like to live under the control of someone who should protect you. I understand what it's like to run without knowing if you'll survive. And I understand what it's like to carry scars that no one else can see. Diana felt something open inside her, a deep, almost spiritual understanding that they were mirrors of each other, two broken souls who had learned to put themselves back together alone. You don't trust anyone, do you? She asked. No. The answer was honest, raw. I don't trust. I don't let people in. Haven't in years. He raised his gaze and there was something vulnerable there, something he rarely showed. But you You scare me, Diana, because you make me let my guard down. Because when I look at you, I want to believe again that maybe not everyone will disappoint me, that maybe I can have something real. Diana raised her free hand, touching his face, her thumb brushing the line of his jaw. You can, she whispered. You can have it. With me. Rowan closed his eyes, turning his face to kiss her palm. It was such an intimate gesture, so loaded with emotion that Diana felt her heart explode. I'm not easy to love, he said against her skin. I have scars, I have demons, I have ways of dealing with things that aren't always healthy. Me too, Diana responded. And maybe that's exactly why we work, because we understand, because we're not trying to fix each other, just exist together. Rowan opened his eyes, and there were tears there, not falling, but shining in the city light. He pulled Diana to the floor, into his lap, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. Stay with me, he murmured against her hair. Not just today, not just until you feel safe. Stay, build something with me. Because I don't know what this is between us, but I know I don't want to lose it. Diana nestled against his chest, listening to the strong beating of his heart. I'll stay, she promised, for as long as you want me. Then forever, Rowan said without hesitation. Because that's how long it'll take for me to get tired of you. And spoiler, it's never going to happen. Diana laughed through her tears, and Rowan held her tighter. They stayed like that for hours, intertwined on the living room floor, sharing stories, scars, fears, and hopes. And when they finally went to bed, to Rowan's room, as had become custom, it wasn't with sexual desire. It was with something much deeper, love beginning to blossom in fertile ground that had been plowed by pain. And maybe it was the strongest kind of love, the kind that rises from the ashes. 3 weeks had passed since that night of confessions. 3 weeks of looks that lasted too long, of accidental touches that became intentional, of stolen kisses that left them both trembling with contained desire. 3 weeks of sleeping in the same bed, bodies intertwined, but always stopping before crossing that final line. But there was a limit to how long two hungry hearts could wait. That night, Diana was in the kitchen making tea, wearing only one of Rowan's oversized t-shirts that reached mid-thigh and pajama shorts that were barely visible under the fabric. Her hair fell loose over her shoulders, still damp from the shower, smelling of lavender and vanilla. She didn't hear when Rowan came in from the office where he'd spent the last few hours on video conferences. He stopped in the doorway, just watching, the way she moved through his kitchen with familiarity, as if she'd always belonged there. The curve of her exposed neck, her skin still pink from the hot shower, the long, bare legs that his mind had already imagined wrapped around his waist more times than he should admit. Diana turned, startled to see him. The cup nearly slipped from her hands. You scared me, she said, bringing her hand to her chest, feeling her heart racing. Rowan didn't respond immediately. He just walked toward her slowly, like a predator who had finally decided to stop playing with its prey. His eyes were dark, intense, burning with something that made the air around them feel heavier. Rowan? Diana took a step back, her back hitting the counter. Are you okay? No. He stopped in front of her, so close that Diana could feel the heat emanating from his body. He wore only grey sweatpants, his bare chest revealing defined muscles, his skin still with small drops of water from his own shower. I'm not okay. What happened? Concern colored Diana's voice. You. The answer was simple, devastating. You happened, Diana, and I can't take it anymore. Before she could ask what he meant, Rowan placed his hands on the counter, one on each side of her body, trapping her. His face was inches from hers, his breathing heavy, his eyes traveling over every feature of Diana's face as if memorizing it. 3 weeks, he said, his voice hoarse, rough. 3 weeks having you in my bed, feeling your body against mine, waking up with you in my arms. 3 weeks of kissing you and having to stop, of touching you and having to control myself. He leaned closer, his lips brushing her ear. And I'm at my limit, Diana. Completely at my limit. Diana felt her entire body catch fire. His hands weren't touching her. but the proximity was so intense she could feel every inch of the minimal distance separating them. "Then don't control yourself," she whispered, surprising herself with her own courage. Rowan pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "Are you sure?" There was urgency there, but also care. "Because if I start, I won't be able to stop. And I want to do this right. I want to make you feel everything you deserve to feel." Diana raised her hands, placing them on his bare chest, feeling his heart beating wildly under her palms. "I'm sure," she said, firm, clear. "I want you, Rowan. All of you. Now." It was all he needed. Rowan grabbed her by the waist, lifting her and setting her on the counter in one fluid motion. Diana opened her legs instinctively, letting him position himself between them, finally bringing their bodies together. He held her face with both hands and kissed her, not with the restraint of previous kisses, but with all the accumulated hunger of weeks of repressed desire. It was a desperate kiss, hungry, wet. Their tongues met in an intimate and wild dance, exploring, tasting, claiming. Diana wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling him closer, feeling his hardness pressing against her through the thin layers of fabric. Rowan groaned against her mouth, his hands moving down her neck over her shoulders, gripping her waist with possessive force. He broke the kiss only to trail a path of wet kisses along her jaw, down her neck, gently biting the sensitive skin where her pulse beat rapidly. "Rowan," Diana sighed, her hands gripping his shoulders, her nails lightly scratching his skin. "I know, love," he murmured against her skin. "I know." He picked her up, and Diana wrapped her arms and legs around him as Rowan carried her out of the kitchen. They kissed along the way, stopping against walls, stumbling over furniture, unable to keep their hands off each other for more than seconds. When they finally reached Rowan's bedroom, he laid her on the bed carefully as if she were something precious and fragile. City light came through the panoramic windows, bathing the room in silver and golden tones, creating shadows that danced over their skin. Rowan stood beside the bed, looking at Diana lying there, hair spread on the pillow, lips swollen from kisses, eyes shining with desire. She had never looked so beautiful. "You're perfect," he said, his voice loaded with admiration and desire. Diana reached out her hand. "Come here." He lay down beside her, propping himself on one elbow, his free hand tracing the outline of Diana's face down her neck, over her shoulders. "Tell me if I go too far," he whispered. "Promise?" "I promise." Diana pulled him into another kiss, and this time it was she who took control, exploring his mouth with her own tongue, biting his lower lip, drawing a deep groan from Rowan's throat. His hands slid under her shirt, touching the bare skin of her waist, slowly moving up her ribs. Diana arched her body, giving silent permission, and Rowan didn't hesitate. He pulled the shirt up, revealing inch by inch of skin that he immediately covered with kisses. When the shirt was completely removed, Rowan stopped for a moment, just looking. Diana lay beneath him, vulnerable and exposed, but not ashamed. There was trust in her eyes. Trust in him. "You leave me speechless," Rowan murmured, leaning down to kiss between her breasts, his hands reverently tracing every curve. Completely speechless. He took time exploring, tasting, learning every sigh, every moan, every place that made Diana gasp. His hands and mouth worked in sync, creating sensations that made her body tremble. Diana pulled him back to her lips, her hands moving down his back over his hips, pulling him closer. "Rowan," she whispered against his mouth, "I want to feel you. All of you." He pulled away only long enough to remove the rest of the clothes still separating them. When he lay back over her, skin against skin for the first time, they both sighed at the sensation. "Are you sure?" he asked, framing her face with his hands, his eyes searching for any sign of doubt. "With you? Always." Diana wrapped her legs around his waist, bringing him closer. Rowan kissed her deeply as he finally joined them, moving slowly, carefully, giving Diana time to adjust. She closed her eyes, losing herself in the sensation of completeness, of connection so deep it went beyond the physical. They moved together in a rhythm that started slow and tender, but gradually increased in intensity. Hands explored, mouths met, bodies fit together perfectly like pieces of a puzzle that had always been destined to complete each other. "Look at me," Rowan asked, his voice rough with emotion. I want to see you. Diana opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. Dark, intense, full of something that went far beyond desire. It was adoration. It was surrender. It was love not yet spoken, but felt in every touch, in every shared breath. When pleasure finally took them beyond the edge, it was together, looking into each other's eyes, bodies trembling in unison, names being whispered like prayers. Afterward, when their breathing finally calmed, Rowan rolled to the side, pulling Diana to rest on his chest. He stroked her hair in slow, hypnotic movements, while she listened to the accelerated beating of his heart. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Diana raised her head, smiling. "Better than okay. I'm complete." Rowan smiled, a genuine, rare smile that lit up his entire face. He pulled her into a slow, tender kiss, full of promises. "You're everything I didn't even know I needed," he whispered against her lips. "Everything, Diana." She nestled back on his chest, her eyes beginning to grow heavy. "I love you," she murmured, the words escaping before she could think them through. Rowan froze for a moment, then he tightened his arms around her, kissing the top of her head. "I love you too," he confessed. "So much it scares me." Diana smiled against his skin, finally allowing herself to completely relax. And that night, wrapped in each other's arms, they slept the sleep of those who have finally found their safe harbor. But outside, storms were forming, and soon they would have to decide if their love was strong enough to survive what was coming. The peace lasted exactly 5 days. Diana woke up with the sun flooding the bedroom, her body still intertwined with Rowan's. They had spent the last few nights exploring each other, learning every sigh, every touch that drew moans, every word whispered in the dark that sealed the connection between them even more. She felt safe, loved, complete, in a way she had never imagined possible. But then Rowan's phone rang. He answered without opening his eyes, his voice still hoarse with sleep. "Hale." Diana felt his body tense instantly. He sat up abruptly in bed, his free hand running through his hair in a gesture of frustration she had already learned to recognize. "When?" Pause. "How much evidence?" Longer pause. "I understand. Give me 30 minutes. He hung up, staying still for a moment, looking at the phone as if it contained all the answers in the universe. Diana sat up too, pulling the sheet to cover her bare chest, her heart already starting to race. "What is it?" Rowan turned to her, and Diana saw something she had never seen before in his eyes. Fear. Not for himself, but for her. "Your uncle." His jaw was clenched, the muscles in his neck tense. "He's pressuring the police to issue a warrant for you. He's claiming you stole confidential documents from his company, that you're involved in financial fraud. He's building a case to make you look like a criminal." Diana felt her blood run cold. "But I didn't do any of that." "I know. He's fabricating evidence." Rowan held her face with both hands, forcing her to keep her gaze fixed on his. "But he has connections, Diana. Judges, prosecutors, people who owe him favors if he gets that warrant." "I'll be arrested," Diana completed, her voice coming out shaky. "No." The word came out like a growl. "That's not going to happen. I won't let it." "How are you going to stop it?" Diana felt tears burn her eyes. "Rowan, he's powerful, he has resources, people, I'm just—" "No." Rowan interrupted her, kissing her hard. "Don't you dare diminish who you are. You're not just anything, you're everything. And I'm going to protect you even if I have to destroy his entire empire to do it." Diana saw the determination etched into every line of his face. But she also saw something else, a decision already made, something he was hiding. "What are you going to do?" she asked, fear rising. Rowan stood up, starting to dress with quick, precise movements. "My lawyer discovered that your uncle is involved in money laundering, influence peddling, bribery of public officials. We have evidence, documents, bank transfers, recordings, enough to destroy him. Then use it." Diana stood up too, wrapping the sheet around her body. "Expose him, make him pay for everything." "It's not that simple." Rowan put on a black dress shirt, his fingers working the buttons efficiently. "If I expose that evidence now, he'll know it came from me. He'll retaliate. And the first thing he'll do is implicate you even more deeply. He'll say you stole the documents, that you're working with me to extort him. He'll turn you into the villain. Diana felt the ground open beneath her feet. So what do we do? Rowan stopped dressing, looking at her with an intensity that made Diana's heart stop. I take the blame. What? The whisper came out strangled. I'm going to turn myself in to the authorities. I'll say I was the one who hacked his systems, stole the documents, planned everything. That you didn't know anything. That I just gave you shelter because I felt sorry for you. He walked to her, holding her by the shoulders. You go free. He loses power over you. And while I'm in custody, my legal team will work to expose the truth and clear me. No. Diana shook her head violently, tears finally falling. No, Rowan, I'm not going to let you do that. I'm not going to let you sacrifice yourself for me. Diana, no. She pushed his chest, anger and fear mixing. You think I'm just going to accept this? That I'll let you go to prison while I stay here safe? After everything we've been through? After you made me believe I'm not alone anymore? Rowan pulled her against his chest, holding her tightly while she sobbed. I don't have a choice, he murmured against her hair. If we stay together, he'll destroy us both. But if I step away, if I take the blame, you have a chance. A real chance to be free. I don't want to be free without you, Diana screamed against his chest. Don't you understand? You are my freedom. You're the only thing that makes me feel alive. And if you turn yourself in, I'll be trapped anyway. Trapped in a world where you don't exist. Rowan held her face, forcing her to look at him. There were tears in his own eyes now, tears he wasn't trying to hide. Then help me find another way, he said, his voice breaking. Because I'm desperate, Diana. I don't know how to keep you safe without sacrificing myself, and the idea of something happening to you destroys me. Diana wiped the tears from his face with trembling hands. We fight together, she said firmly. I'm not running away alone again. Not without you. Never without you. Rowan closed his eyes, resting his forehead against hers. You have no idea what you're asking. Yes, I do. Diana kissed him softly. I'm asking you to trust us. To trust that together we're stronger than apart. To stop trying to carry everything alone. Rowan's phone rang again. He answered, still holding Diana with one arm. Talk. Pause. How much time do we have? Pause. Understood. He hung up, looking at Diana with a mixture of fear and determination. They're coming. Your uncle got the warrant. The police will be here in less than an hour. Diana felt panic rise but forced herself to stay calm. Then we have an hour to disappear. Diana, we run together, Rowan. She held his face firmly. We take the evidence, get out of the city and find someone who can help us expose the truth without destroying us in the process. But we do it together. You and me. The way it should be. Rowan studied her for a long moment. Diana could see the war happening inside him. The instinct to protect her fighting against the desire not to lose her. Finally, he nodded. Together, he repeated. But if at any point you're in danger, I'm getting you out. Even if it means turning myself in. Deal. Diana stepped back, starting to dress quickly. But the same goes for you. If you're in danger, I'm not just going to watch. Got it? For the first time that terrible morning, Rowan smiled, small but genuine. Got it. They moved in perfect sync, packing only the essentials, grabbing documents, laptops, cash that Rowan kept for emergencies. In 20 minutes, they were ready. Rowan took Diana's cell phone, removed the battery. They can track it. From now on, we only use burner phones. Diana nodded, grabbing the backpack. When she turned to leave, Rowan grabbed her wrist, pulling her back. He kissed her, deep, desperate, full of promises and fears. When they pulled apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. I love you, he said. No matter what happens, remember that. I love you, Diana responded. And we're going to survive this. Together. They left the penthouse holding hands, going down the service elevator, exiting through the garage where a car was already waiting. Marcus, Rowan's trusted driver, was at the wheel, asking no questions. As the car accelerated through the streets of Manhattan, moving away from everything familiar, Diana looked through the rear window. The penthouse where she had found safety, love, a new beginning, was getting smaller and smaller. But when she looked at Rowan beside her, fingers interlaced with hers, determination etched into every line of his face, she knew. It didn't matter where they were going. Because they were going together, and that was all that mattered. 2 weeks, 14 days living in cheap hotel rooms, changing cities every 2 days, looking over their shoulders at every corner. Diana never imagined that freedom could feel so much like a prison, but at least this time she wasn't alone. Rowan worked tirelessly, encrypted calls with lawyers, secret meetings with investigative journalists, building a case so solid that not all of Charles Williams's money and influence could destroy it. Diana watched him work, determined, focused, tireless, and loved him even more for it. That morning, they were in a small hotel on the outskirts of Boston. The room smelled of mildew and cheap detergent. The wallpaper was peeling in some corners, but it had a bed, hot water, and was temporarily safe. It was all they needed. Diana was sitting on the bed, legs crossed, drinking bad coffee from a styrofoam cup, when Rowan hung up the phone and turned to her. There was something different in his face, a light in his eyes she hadn't seen in days. "We did it," he said, his voice loaded with barely contained emotion. Diana almost dropped her cup. "Did what?" Rowan walked to her, kneeling on the floor between her legs, holding her hands tightly. "Everything. We got everything, Diana. The New York Times is publishing the exposé tomorrow. Complete documents, bank transactions, recordings of conversations. Everything your uncle did. The money laundering, the bribery, the extortion, even the attempt to force you into that arranged marriage." He squeezed her hands, his eyes shining. "He's finished." Diana felt the world stop. "Finished?" "Arrest warrants have already been issued. FBI, IRS, even international authorities are involved. He has nowhere to run." Rowan brought her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "And all charges against you have been dropped. Completely. You're free, Diana. Truly free." The tears came before Diana could stop them, tears of relief, of joy, of a liberation so deep it was almost painful. She pulled Rowan up, wrapping him in a hug so tight she could barely breathe. "It's over," she whispered against his neck, feeling her entire body tremble. "Really over." "It's over," Rowan confirmed, holding her with the same intensity. "He'll never be able to hurt you again. Never again." They stayed like that for long minutes, just holding each other, letting reality sink in. Years of fear, of control, of living under the shadow of someone who used power as a weapon, all of it finally had an end. When Diana finally pulled away, she saw that Rowan also had tears in his eyes. She wiped them with her thumbs, smiling through her own tears. "You did this," she said. "You saved me." "We did this," Rowan corrected, holding her face tenderly. "You were brave enough to run, to trust me, to fight when it would have been easier to give up. This victory is yours, Diana. It always was." Diana kissed him, deep, grateful, full of all the love she felt overflowing from her chest. When they pulled apart, she realized that for the first time in weeks she felt light, as if an impossible weight had finally been lifted from her shoulders. "And now?" she asked. "What do we do now?" Rowan smiled, that rare, genuine smile that completely transformed his face. "Now? Now we live. The way we always should have lived, without fear, without hiding, just living." 3 days later, they were in Manhattan again. But this time, not hiding. Rowan had rented a helicopter, and now they were flying over the city at sunset, the lights beginning to flicker like fallen stars on the concrete. Diana was beside Rowan, hands intertwined, looking out the window. The city that had almost destroyed her now seemed different, full of possibilities, new beginnings, stories not yet written. "Are you ready?" Rowan asked, squeezing her hand. Diana looked at him, confused. "Ready for what?" He smiled mysteriously, pulling a small box from his blazer pocket. Diana's heart skipped a beat when he opened the box, revealing a simple and elegant ring, a white gold band with a single diamond. Nothing ostentatious, but absolutely perfect. "Rowan," she could barely breathe. "I know it's fast," he began, his voice firm but loaded with emotion. "I know we met under impossible circumstances, that we went through things most couples would never go through. But Diana," he held her free hand, his eyes fixed on hers, "I don't want to wait. I don't want to waste one more single day without making it clear what you mean to me." Tears were already streaming down Diana's face again. You saved me as much as I saved you, Rowan continued. You showed me there was still goodness in the world, that there was still something worth fighting for. You made me believe in love again, in hope, in a future. He took the ring from the box, holding it between his fingers. I don't want to just be the man who saved you, Diana. I want to be the one you chose to love, every day, for the rest of your life. Diana sobbed, unable to form words. Marry me, Rowan asked, simple and direct. Not because you need protection, not because you're scared or lost, but because you love me, because you want to build a life with me, because when you look at the future, you see me in it. Yes, Diana managed to say, her voice broken with emotion. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Rowan slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit as if it had always been made to be there. Then he pulled her into a kiss that was promise, celebration, and beginning, all at once. The helicopter pilot discreetly looked away, smiling as the couple kissed against the backdrop of Manhattan, illuminated by twilight. When they finally separated, Rowan pressed his forehead to hers, both smiling like lovesick teenagers. I love you, he whispered. More than words can express. I love you, Diana responded, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life showing you how much. The helicopter landed on top of Rowan's building. When they descended, he guided her not to the penthouse, but to the terrace, where Diana discovered he had prepared a surprise. Candles floated in glass containers, creating a luminous path. White rose petals covered the floor. A table for two was set up near the edge, overlooking the entire city, and soft music played from hidden speakers, creating a magical, intimate atmosphere. You planned all this? Diana asked, amazed. I had hope, Rowan admitted, smiling. Hope that you would say yes. Hope that we could celebrate not just our freedom, but our future. He guided her to the table, pulling out the chair for her with old-fashioned chivalry that made Diana's heart melt. They dined under the stars. Delicious food prepared by a private chef who had discreetly left. Wine that Rowan had saved for special occasions. Conversation that flowed naturally between stolen kisses and looks loaded with promises. When they finished, Rowan stood up, extending his hand. Dance with me. Diana took his hand, letting herself be pulled into his arms. They moved slowly to the sound of the music, bodies pressed together, unhurried, just appreciating the moment. You know what's funny? Diana said, resting her head on his chest. What? When I ran that night in the rain, barefoot and terrified, I was running from hell. I thought I was running into the void, into the unknown, but I was running to you, to this, to a love I didn't even know could exist. Rowan tightened his arms around her, kissing the top of her head. And when I caught you on that corner, I thought I was just saving someone who needed help. I didn't know I was catching my future in my arms. Didn't know that woman trembling from the cold was going to completely transform my life. Diana raised her head, looking at him. Do you regret it? Saving you? Rowan smiled, wiping away a tear running down her face. Diana, it was the best decision I ever made in my life, and I would go through it all again. Every danger, every fear, every impossible moment, if it meant having you here in my arms, wearing my ring. She pulled him into a slow, tender kiss, full of gratitude and love. When they pulled apart, she whispered against his lips, You escaped from hell and fell into my arms, and now you're never leaving them. Rowan smiled, that complete, radiant smile she loved so much. Never again, he promised. And there, under the Manhattan stars, two wounded hearts finally found what they had always been looking for. Peace, love, home, in each other. 6 months later, morning sun came through the windows of the country house, tinting everything in golden and warm tones. Diana woke slowly, wrapped in soft cotton sheets that smelled of lavender and that woody essence she had learned to associate with home. Not the penthouse in Manhattan, though they still visited occasionally, but this house, a rustic and elegant construction in upstate New York, surrounded by acres of forest, with a private lake that reflected the sky like a perfect mirror. It was theirs, truly theirs. A sanctuary away from the chaos of the city, where they could simply exist without looking over their shoulders, without fear, without pressure. Just the two of them, and the future unfolding slowly, one day at a time. Diana turned over in bed, finding the space beside her empty but still warm. She smiled, knowing exactly where Rowan was. She got up, wearing only one of his oversized t-shirts and pajama shorts, and walked barefoot down the wooden hallway, following the unmistakable smell of fresh coffee and something sweet baking in the oven. When she entered the kitchen, the scene that greeted her made her heart squeeze in the best possible way. Rowan had his back to her, wearing only grey pajama pants that sat low on his hips, his bare torso revealing muscles she knew intimately now. He was in front of the stove stirring something in a pan, his shoulders relaxed in a way she had never seen in the first months. He was at peace, complete. As if sensing her presence, he looked over his shoulder, and that smile, the one he reserved only for her, lit up his face. "Good morning, Mrs. Hale." Diana still felt butterflies every time she heard that. They had married 3 months ago, a small and intimate ceremony in the garden of this same house, just a few close friends, and Maria, the maid who had helped Diana escape, and whom Rowan had found and made sure was safe and protected. "Good morning, Mr. Hale," she responded, walking to him and wrapping her arms around his waist from behind, pressing her face against his warm back. "You woke up early again. I couldn't keep sleeping." He turned a little, enough to kiss her forehead. "You were so beautiful sleeping that I had to leave before I woke you up in the worst possible way." Diana laughed, playfully biting his shoulder. "I wouldn't complain." Rowan turned off the stove, turning completely and pulling her into his arms. He held her face with both hands, his thumbs caressing her cheekbones, his eyes traveling over every feature as if memorizing it, even though he'd already done it 1,000 times. "6 months," he said softly. 6 months since you officially became my wife, and I still wake up every day thinking it's a dream." Diana rose on her tiptoes, kissing him slowly. "If it's a dream, then I never want to wake up." They kissed there, in the kitchen lit by morning sun, unhurried, just appreciating the feeling of having all the time in the world. When they finally separated, Rowan pointed to the table where he had already laid out coffee, fresh fruit, bread still warm from the oven. "Breakfast?" "You spoil me too much," Diana said, sitting down. "Impossible." Rowan sat beside her, taking her hand and interlacing their fingers. "You deserve to be spoiled every day for the rest of your life." They ate in comfortable silence, exchanging smiles and casual touches, a brush of fingers here, a stolen kiss there. This was their routine now. Waking up together, preparing meals together, spending days exploring the property, swimming in the lake, reading together on the porch, making love whenever the urge struck, which was frequently. Diana had started working with an NGO that helped women escape situations of domestic abuse and family control. It was her way of transforming pain into purpose, of using her experience to help others who were still trapped. Rowan supported her completely, had even donated a significant amount to the organization. Rowan, in turn, had completely restructured his company. He'd stepped back from day-to-day operations, delegating to trusted people, and now focused on projects that truly mattered. Investments in sustainable technologies, social programs, causes that made a real difference in the world. They were finally living, not just surviving. After breakfast, Rowan pulled her outside to the porch overlooking the lake. The morning was perfect, blue sky without a cloud, gentle breeze carrying the smell of pines, birds singing somewhere in the forest. Rowan sat in one of the wooden chairs, pulling Diana to sit on his lap. She settled in, resting her head on his shoulder, feeling his arms wrap around her from behind, his hands resting on her stomach. "You know what I was thinking," he murmured against her hair. About how everything changed, how a year ago I was alone in that penthouse, convinced that was how my life would be forever. Work, loneliness, walls I'd built so high that no one could climb them." He tightened his arms around her. "And then you appeared, trembling in the rain, vulnerable and strong at the same time, and you blew all those walls to pieces." Diana turned her face, kissing his jaw. "You blew mine down too. You showed me that love doesn't have to hurt. That trust isn't a weakness, that I can be loved exactly as I am, without needing to mold myself to please anyone." Rowan turned her face to him, kissing her with tenderness. When he pulled away, there was something in his eyes, a vulnerability, a hope that made Diana's heart race. "Diana," he began, his voice loaded with emotion, "I want to build a family with you. Not now, there's no rush. But when you're ready, I want children. Little versions of us running through this house, filling these rooms with laughter and mess. I want to see you pregnant, glowing with the life we created together. I want to teach our children to be kind, strong, brave like their mother." Diana felt tears burn her eyes. Happy tears this time, always happy now. "I want that too," she whispered. "I want everything with you. A family, a life, decades of mornings like this. Growing old by your side, watching our grandchildren play in this same lake." Rowan held her tighter, burying his face in her neck. "I love you so much," he said, his voice muffled. "So much that sometimes it hurts. So much that I don't know how to contain it inside my chest." "Then don't contain it." Diana turned on his lap, facing him, her legs wrapping around his waist. She held his face with both hands, forcing him to look into her eyes. "Love me without fear, without limits, because I'm going to love you the same way. Today, tomorrow, forever." They kissed there on the porch, wrapped by the perfect morning, by whispered promises, and by the love that overflowed between them. When they finally separated, Rowan pressed his forehead to hers, eyes closed, a soft smile on his lips. "You escaped from hell and fell into my arms," he whispered, echoing the words that had become their mantra. Diana smiled, completing the phrase they had repeated to each other countless times since that day on the terrace in Manhattan. "And now, I'm never leaving them." "Never again," Rowan promised, kissing her again. And there, in that house in the middle of the forest, far from everything that had tried to destroy them, Diana and Rowan finally found what they had always been looking for. It wasn't just love. It wasn't just safety. It was home. It was peace. It was the absolute certainty that no matter what the world threw at them, they would face it together. Because some encounters are not coincidence, they're destiny. And some loves are not just for one lifetime, they're for eternity. The sun climbed higher in the sky, bathing the couple in golden light as they remained intertwined, breathing together, existing in the same space, loving without reservations. And somewhere, amid the singing of birds and the whisper of wind in the trees, it seemed that the universe itself was smiling. Because sometimes, just sometimes, impossible love stories find their happy ending. And this was just the beginning. Diana escaped from hell and fell into Rowan's arms. He didn't refuse. He held her tight and never let go. What began with fear and desperation transformed into the most intense love story they could ever imagine. Two wounded hearts that found healing in each other. Two lost souls that became home for one another. They proved that true love isn't born from perfection, but from the courage to be vulnerable, to fight together, to choose each other every day. And maybe this story reminds us of something important. Sometimes the most frightening falls take us exactly where we were always meant to be. Could it be that you're also running toward your destiny without realizing it? If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and become a member to get early access to upcoming stories. And if you feel it was truly worth listening to, also click the Super Thanks button. Your gesture makes all the difference and helps us keep bringing stories that move you.